we opened up the show talking about Visa and kind of along those lines and the potential, guardrails and payment stoppages that Visa can put on a variety of different companies. But late last week, it was reported that OnlyFans is going to stop, allowing posts involving sexually explicit acts to be put on the platform. OnlyFans is kind of notoriously popular for being explicitly about that and giving a sort of safe way for sex workers to monetize their content and also, be able to acquire things through direct deposit that helps to give them credit, payment statements that are really good for things like improving their credit score or buying a car or renting somewhere, very integral parts of a person's daily life. So this, OnlyFans alluded to, came at the behest of their banking partners and potential investors. And some of their banking partners are, yes, Visa and MasterCard. MasterCard explicitly has pushed back against that, saying we did not influence this decision at all, but it's created a real kerfuffle is one word to put it, rug pulling people's employment prospects out from under them is another way to put it. But it's really created a large conversation about the viability of sex work and the importance of it within our modern context, as well as the ways that gatekeepers can just shut things down without, any form of recourse. Naomi, I want to toss this to you first to get your perspective.
Yeah. So, lots of things to cover here. First of all, it's absolutely no surprise that this is the direction that payment processors are going on. There's this very murky, incestuous relationship between payment processors and the government. Sometimes it's hard to know, who's pulling what strings. In the past, we've seen lots of crackdowns on other platforms. We notoriously saw, Pornhub payment processors kind of left there. We saw Patreon payment processors started to clamp down on the kind of content you could have on those sites. And really, all of that was happening probably end of 2018 and in 2019. And it was very clear then that was going to be the next wave of people into crypto. And also, if you look at, where crypto thrives and what really makes it a robust economy, it's really the kind of gray markets, right? So drugs, prostitution. And so it absolutely is no surprise that this could be another bedrock of cryptocurrency, because you have people in an industry that a lot of government officials and a lot of payment processors don't approve of. And so then they start to censor the choices of people in those industries. So, I think that we are going to see, what surprises me about this is OnlyFans kind of rolled over, mind the pun, and said, okay, we'll just stop all the sex stuff on our sex site. And instead, they weren't okay, well, we'll just add more cryptocurrency options, because it is very clear that they just need something that's uncensorable, because they're about to lose their entire business model. This is akin to a prostitution house turning around and saying, oh, due to regulatory pressure, we're now going to be a restaurant. Because OnlyFans is now saying that they're going to be offering cooking classes.
They're going to do cooking videos. Yeah.
No one is on the platform for. So this is completely a different business. So, I think it's crazy that they're just going along with this and are kicking these people off the site. It really is turning the back on the people who built this platform. They became popular because all these other people had nowhere to go. And so, OnlyFans came out as this kind of bastion of hope for people in this industry who wanted to make a living. So it is sad and startling to see. But, I'll throw to the rest of the group. Will, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, Jen, I'll throw it to you first. I'll come back to my thoughts. Saw your hand go up.
Oh, sorry, Jen.
Sure. No worry about it. No worries. I kind of echo your thoughts, Naomi. I'm really surprised from a business standpoint that they gave in to the payment processors. If it were in fact the payment processors who said, we don't want to be involved in this anymore, because they had a projected revenue for 2021 of $1.2 billion. So even if we talk about okay, maybe they're not getting VC funding, $1.2 billion in revenue is a lot. I don't think at this point they would need to raise another round of money. And so something curious is going on here, and I don't know what it is, but I'll pass it back to you, Will.
Yeah, I'll take, I guess, a different angle. I'm not super surprised that this happened at some point. Payment processors have a history of shutting these things down. That's why crypto has always been so interesting to people in a lot of these gray markets, as you said, Naomi, because you're able to process payments without anybody getting in between your payments there. It is truly peer-to-peer in the sense that I can send money from person A to person B and nobody's in between looking at that payment. It makes sense to me that would happen. There's a long history of the government or payment processors or just in larger companies in general shutting these things down, because they have investors who back them, and those investors share opinions and they make decisions on which companies they want to service. So it makes sense to me either way. If it's unfortunate or not, that's your own personal take for this story. But it's not super surprising to me to see payment processors squash down on companies like this again. Zach, your thoughts?
I mean, first of all, this news development created a great cottage industry of metaphors. One that I saw that I really liked was like likening this move to if IHOP decided to not serve breakfast anymore, only lunch and dinner. shout out to Axios on that one. I thought it was clever. But I will shout out some news that we saw this morning with like Substack, right? Substack deciding to tap into the Lightning Network to accept Bitcoin payments, which is a potentially could be applicable to a site like OnlyFans, right? So I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting to see if this like platform risk around financial stuff that causes companies to venture into accepting crypto payments. But obviously time will tell, and whether or not Substack finds success in doing that, I think will be a good signal for other sites to maybe follow suit. I saw Ben and Naomi. I'll let you guys duke it out to close out the show.
No, yeah, I just want to kind of bring it full circle, right? I think the payment rails and stuff are really important, but I also want to say what these companies are doing and what credit card companies are doing by, sort of cutting off access to these things. So those are pushing people further into darker markets, which is dangerous for them, right? OnlyFans allowed creators and sex workers to create content on their own terms, gave them a direct revenue stream for minimal money grabs on the back end. And same thing kind of with Fosta Sesta, same thing with Backpage.com being shut down. You're pushing people into physical spaces where they don't know their clients and have to have direct access with them. That is incredibly, incredibly dangerous. And particularly in the US, where you've had the federal government do things like Operation Chokehold to try and cut down on the amount of payment services that are pressuring, the government's pressuring them to also cut off to access to things like firearms and things like sex workers and stuff like that. I think it's really important that we note that this is debilitating to a lot of people in a lot of different ways and is incredibly dangerous. And particularly in the US, which has a tendency towards a more neoconservative evangelical right-wing bent, and some of the NGOs that are pushing this narrative around this being solely about sex trafficking and is not quite that clear. So I think all of that's worth noting in this context, is where this is not just a black and white thing and has very, very real, like all tech industries. At the end, it's about humans and their lives. And that needs to be appreciated more so than sort of regulatory gray areas for multi-billion-dollar companies. But hey, maybe that's just me.
I think that's such a good point, Ben. And I will just add, with the Substack news as well. So I was kicked off MailChimp. A bunch of crypto people with their newsletters were kicked off MailChimp, another industry that the government deems as risky. And Substack took all of those people. They've traditionally been a very, open platform, free speech. It's awesome that they're adding uncensorable payments to their model. And just on the side of regulation in finance and who pulls the strings, I mean, when you have an industry that is so heavily regulated as the financial industry, then you end up with all these payment processors and people, businesses in that industry who have to, appease the right people and make sure that even if they're not doing anything illegal, they still have to abide by the whims of all these politicians because otherwise they can't expand. Otherwise they can't, go into other areas in finance. And so really it is a way for governments to curtail choices via these payment processes. We saw it with WikiLeaks and when the government, stopped payments and donations being able to be processed to them. And so crypto really has been the savior all along. I think it's going to be the savior in this industry as well.